Hey guys, I am absent on another instruction day, which is not cool. So I decided to give you a video to try to help you with what's going on here. Um, what you're going to need to do first is copy and paste the solution code into your program. So when this is for program structure instruction. Okay, so you're going to take this, the code that's in Google Classroom, copy and paste it. So pause this video and copy and paste it before you do anything else so that you can kind of look at the video and look at the code, and then I'll explain it to you. So, all right. So assuming that you have done that, what today or what this particular set of instructions is looking at something called an event loop. It's also the secondary goal of this particular lesson is to look at the organization of a loop, of loops we've been writing and programs we've been writing up to this point. So I'm going to talk you through that and show you what the comments are. There's some additional comments that you wouldn't normally see just to kind of show you some organization, to show you what the purpose of those are, and then we'll look at this event loop and see what it does. Okay. So first of all, if you copied and pasted my code exactly, you have on line 5 a comment that seems kind of silly, but it says import libraries. On line 9, there's a comment that says window. On line 15, there's a line that says animate here, and it calls it the main loop. And then we're skipping lines 19 through 21 right now because I'll have you unhashtag those in a minute, uncomment those because that's actually code. But line 23 has a comment that says draw frame. And so what that means is the frames that are repeating themselves. So in this main loop, while we're animating in our main loop, we're drawing a circle over and over and over again and filling that frame over and over and over again. So each frame is being drawn in each iteration of the loop there, right? So you fill your window, you draw your circle, then you increment the location of your circle, and then on the next iteration of the loop, it'll do it again, right? But it'll fill the window, draw the circle in a slightly different place, right? Because you had previously incremented the value of that circle. So it's just looking these comments, okay, and what they're calling them are paragraphs actually. So it's thinking about the organization piece of your code, right? So what is each section of your code doing? So this section up here before your main loop right here is called setting up your code, and then you have your main loop, and each portion of your main loop is doing something different. And the primary thing we've been looking at here is what we want to do in each frame, right? So we have been drawing things over and over and over again, creating little animations, and what we're moving toward is being able to allow the user to interact with those animations. So it's important that as you're writing your code that you know what's happening and that you're somebody that's looking at your code. So typically when we're coding, we're sharing this experience, and we have a team of coders, right? So that each coder knows what's going on. So this is why you would add these comments to your paragraph, right? So you have this paragraph. This is where I'm drawing the frames. This is where I'm drawing what's being animated. Up here, right, I have another paragraph that we haven't looked at yet, and it's called an event loop. And so we'll look at that in a second. And then of course down here, I'm annotating that, the final portion of my main loop and saying that I'm flipping, displaying that to the user, which that comment's not necessarily needed. But as you change what you're doing, what the goal of your code is, it's important that we want, because our code's about to get a little bit more complicated. that you're adding those comments. This is what I'm doing here, so that if you have a problem in your code, you can go back and fix it, right? So that's what these comments are for. So again, prior to your main loop, that's setting up your program. Then you have your main loop. And now that what we're looking at now is that we have paragraphs of information within our main loop. So what we've been doing prior to today is just simply the paragraph of drawing and animating, right? Drawing my frame, what I want in each frame, and reiterating that loop every single time. I may have two paragraphs because I might be drawing my frame, but within that frame I might have, a set of code that's for drawing a circle and animating a circle, and then I'll have another set of code that is set up for drawing a square and animating that square, right? So we're just looking at what is that organization and setting it up a little bit better so that you can become part of a coding team instead of just this individual coder, because you're probably starting to figure out that writing code is a lot of work. And so if you're trying to write something that's, a really cool game and you're doing it by yourself, it's going to take you many, many years. But if you have teams that are writing code, if you can communicate clearly on that code, then it can happen a lot faster. So that's the point, and that's why we want to start getting organized with writing. Let's move on to the actual new context. So event loops are loops that allow the user to interact with the code. And the first event loop that we're going to look at is super easy. So you're going to unhashtag the event loop, right? So you're just uncommenting this code, and I'm going to dissect it for you and show you what it's doing. So when you write an event loop, this is the general code, right? For event in pygame.event.get : right? You do need the parenthesis. All of that is setting up a particular event. And there's a couple of different events that we can look at, and what we're doing right now is just a quit event, which is super easy. It's when the user hits an X, okay, at the top in the console. It'll actually close out instead of continuing to run. So that's what this is doing, right? So if the event type is quit, and quit means when they hit the X in the console, and I'll show you that in a minute. Animating is false, and I'm gonna show you why that looks a little bit different than what we've been looking at so far. I'm gonna go ahead and actually comment all these lines out again to show you what happens before we put this loop into effect, okay? Typically, what we've been doing here is in our while loop, we have linked our while loop to the number of frames, right? And the problem with that is that sometimes that creates a situation where the animation doesn't look as fluid, or maybe we want something to go off the screen or to continue after it goes off the screen. So if you run this loop before you write any code, so you'll notice that your code looks a little bit different from the beginning than mine did. Like, so the animating true portion wasn't here and the while animating wasn't there. What that is doing is allowing the circle to continue to animate off of the screen, right? So instead of stopping at the end of the screen right here, then it went all the way off the screen. But if I hit the X in my console and I close this out, it gives me the same error that it always does, force quit, right? What this particular event is doing, or this event loop is doing, is it's creating a situation where the user can just X out whenever they want and it not create a program error. Like, if I'm done with it, I want to move on. I don't want to have to hit, hit continue to move on or whatever. I just want to quit out in the middle of running it, which you'll want to do when you're starting to write more complex code. Then you just add this quick event loop in, right? So while you're in this, in your loop for this event, if the user hits the quit button, then animating is false. So that automatically ends the loop and it doesn't give me an error. So there's my circle, and you can see my code still hasn't finished, but when I hit the X to close it out, it doesn't give me that force quit error. So that's what this is about. It's about looking at this event loop, and of course we are going to continue later with some different types, right? So right now it's just Pygame quit. The animating false is just simply ending the loop. That's why we have animating true up here in while animating. If I had a standard code like it was when you began, it was like frames, circle frames is like less than 500, I think is what it said on there. Then I could have just changed my frames to like something higher than 500 so that it automatically ended the loop, which may or may not make sense to you, but we'll look at that again later. So that's the main teaching portion of this assignment today. I'll give you the code solutions for the next section as well, but hopefully that kind of makes what's going on today a little bit less confusing. I don't know. Fingers crossed. I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully, and help to clear up any questions you might have.